Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. We are here today to finish off talking about JumpStart spoilers, the best of, only the rares, mythic rares, and other cards that are brand new to JumpStart. And I gotta be real, man, I keep wanting to call this Kickstarter. My brain keeps moving to that term, and I have to be like, don't call it Kickstarter, don't call it Kickstarter. I had to start this video over like 3 times because of that. So this will be the last time I have to worry about that, with maybe the exception of doing a video talking about the basic lands if there's enough interest in that and we have time for it, because hopefully something really cool is going to be happening tomorrow on the channel. We'll see how things turn out. But either way, there is a card here beside me on the screen by the name of Archaeomender. Let us talk about that. 1 blue and 2 for a 2/3 human wizard. When Archaeomender enters the battlefield, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. The flavor text says, just as a broken relic can be mended, a shattered history can be made whole. All right, I mean, that works as flavor text. Honestly, the concept of this card is really, really cool. The idea of someone who is restoring things through the use of time magic, right? Because that's supposed to be the idea here, is you have an urn, this urn that's been broken apart. It fell or whatever. The pieces have been assembled, brought together for the Archaeomender, and she is using magic to reassemble the object. That is pretty funky. The artwork's nice. I love the window that she is framed in front of. She must have a really nice office, you know? Like this is some pleasant artwork. A nice card to start off our list with. Well, I guess it's not a list, but either way, whatever. Let's move into the Lord of Milling, Bruvac the Grandiloquent. 1 blue and 2 for a 1/4 legendary human advisor. If an opponent would mill 1 or more cards, they mill twice that many cards instead. So if you're using a card that says, hey, target player mills half their library, it's going to double that, which is absolutely insane. And depending on whether it's rounding up or rounding down, it could be their entire deck in 1 card. Not too shabby. So it has a description in the what's it called, reminder box here, saying to mill a card, a player puts the top card of the library into their graveyard. So this is new, them bringing the concept of just using the word mill to talk about milling cards off the top, and I like it. It totally fits. It feels right. I mean, we literally started with the millstone at the beginning of Magic, and that's still what people call it now, decades later, when nobody really uses millstone, right? So the flavor text says, and furthermore, and you can see that Bruvac here, Bruvac the endlessly talking, he looks so dumb. His face looks ridiculous. His hat is stupid. I mean, I know this is obviously some member of the Azorius, and it's like, let me read this gigantic scroll to you. But he looks so dumb, man. If I was somebody who was into like building mill decks, I'd be disappointed that this was how, like, he does it. My epic win is at hand. Come on, scroll dude McDouche hat, let's do this. Like, But overall, not a bad card. He looks so stupid. The idea of a legendary advisor, though, pretty fun, and you can throw him in a persistent petitioner deck. Let's move on. We've got Chained Brute, 1 red and 1 for a 4/3 devil. It doesn't untap during your untap step. Pay 1 mana, sacrifice another creature, untap Chained Brute. Activate this ability only during your turn. The flavor text says a momentary lapse is all it needs to break free. So the artwork shows this big old devil straining against these chains and little devils all crawling up them to pry them loose. I guess that's the idea of you gotta sacrifice a creature to get him unchained, but then he gets chained back up again. I'll be real, I don't 100% get the flavor of this card. You sacrifice a creature to unchain him, but why does he get chained up again? I mean, I know from a mechanical standpoint, for 2 mana it's a 4/3, and they're trying to like find, oh, here's a way we can play around with that, and like you might want to sacrifice your little devils for other effects, but it just feels like from a flavor perspective, why would you summon up a demon that's always in chains and then rechain him all the time? It's just, I don't know, man. The artwork's nice, though. Let's move on. The next card is Zerafa, Chaos Rider. This actually looks like something you would see in like a Warhammer book. That's the vibe this gives. 1 red and 2 for a 2/3. I mean, if you're wondering, clearly this guy would serve Khorne. All right, blood for the blood god. So whenever an opponent draws their first card each turn, if it's not their turn, you create a 1/1 red devil creature token with, when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. So obviously, you could use those sort of tokens with the Chained Hellbrute, and I get the synergy, but it doesn't change that the flavor doesn't work for me. Now, let's focus on what we're actually talking about here. Zerafa. Whenever 1 or more devils you control attack 1 or more players, you and those players each draw a card, then discard a card at random. That's a really cool idea. Devils have this sort of like chaos vibe to them, you know what I mean? And I don't mean Warhammer in this way. I mean just talking about the overall idea of like chaotic randomness. So the idea of these devils running wild, and they could end up helping you. They could end up actually helping your opponent depending on what's discarded and drawn. You know what I mean? Like it's a very funky concept, and it adds like this tumultuous, you never know what's going to happen in the heat of battle moments, right? I like that. And you can see Zerafa here is on his gigantic 4-eyed hell steed that's like half horse, half goat monster, and there's all these devils around him charging. Like, yeah, man, honestly, this is pretty good. I dig the flavor of this quite a bit. Moving on, we've got Angelic Arbiter, 2 white and 5 for a 5/6 flyer. Each opponent who casts a spell this turn can't attack with creatures, and each opponent who attacked with a creature this turn can't cast spells. So this is an interesting rule-setting card. I mean, 7 mana is a lot. That's like a big casting cost. So 7 mana will get you a Platinum Angel, which will stop you from losing the game. So, I mean, that's a pretty steep hill to climb. I feel like this card's okay. I mean, you have to choose whether you want to be able to attack or cast spells. So you can't do both. But overall, it just feels like a bit underwhelming. The art is nice, though. I mean, you have an angel descending from on high, like kind of encircled by clouds, given this framing kind of vibe with the light shining behind the angel. She looks pretty dope. Pretty standard fare for an angel. Overall, this card has never really excited me very much. It feels like it's got all the pieces to be an exciting card, but for some reason, when you put them together, it just doesn't execute the way you would think. But it's not a bad card. It just doesn't get me excited. Now, the next card we're going to look at here, Duelist Heritage. This one's a bit like, I don't know how to feel about this one yet. 1 white and 2. Whenever 1 or more creatures attack, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike until end of turn. And it says the best techniques outlive their creators. So you've got somebody whose heritage is represented by, like, you've got this shield with all these swords displayed behind it and blades arrayed above it. I guess this is supposed to be like maybe the heraldry of a household. And then you have a couple of spectral blades in front of it that I guess are supposed to be imbued with maybe the knowledge of the ancestors, and they will guide you. Is that supposed to be the idea? It's weird because Duelist's Heritage doesn't just affect you, right? Like the wording says whenever 1 or more creatures attack, which means that when your opponent's attacking you in a 2-player game, you can have one of their creatures gain double strike if you want, unlikely, but in like a 3-player game, you can, oh, you're swinging at him. Yeah, I'm going to give one of you guys double strike. But how does that work? Like, where does the, like, if you have a Duelist Heritage, it's like, I come from a long line of duelists. It's etched in our very bones at this point. You know what I mean? Like, that sort of scenario makes sense to a degree, where it's like, yeah, we just have a talent for it that's been honed over years and whatever, versus like, hey, you, goat that's charging into battle, take this sword. Oh, thanks. I now know how to fence. That's weird, right? You know? I don't know. It's a cool card. It's cool, but it's weird. Moving on, we've got a fairly disappointing card here. This is 1 white and 3 for High Sentinels of Arashin. It's a 3/4 flyer. It gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it, and pay 4, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Yeah, it feels, this card has always felt underwhelming. I tried to make it work in my cube even, and it never feels good. The amount of mana you have to pump, like, most creatures don't have, like, there's tons of creatures that don't have +1/+1 counters. So to make them relevant to boost this guy, you've got to spend an extra 4 each time, and all that does is put a +1/+1 counter on another one of your guys and give this guy a +1/+1 boost. And that rarely feels like it's worth it. And the artwork as well is like, it's a bunch of Aven just kind of standing there. I mean, yeah, sure, they're Sentinels, and they're the high Sentinels, but I don't know, the whole card just, it doesn't excite me, you know? Let's move on. Core Spirit Dancer. 1 white and 1 for a 0/2 core wizard. Core Spirit Dancer gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. Whenever you cast an aura spell, you may draw a card. The flavor text says she reaches beyond the physical realm, touching the ideals from which all creatures draw their power. Now, this is a funky concept. I like this. The idea of somebody who is like spiritually connected to different beasts and able to draw on, like when you lay enchantment magic on them, they can draw more power from it. Like imagine being a planeswalker and you travel to all these different planes of existence, and then you find this like tribal wild woman, this crazy like shaman who's connected to these different animals, and you find out that, oh, she's got like intrinsic connections to enchantment magic, and whenever you infuse like enchantment magic in the area, she is able to like aid you. You draw cards, and she's able to help like increase your power. And even more so, you turn out to be even more surprised when you lay enchantments upon her, and she internally is able to draw from your planeswalker magic without disrupting the fabric of your magic. She's able to draw on it into herself to strengthen and enhance herself. That would be an amazing find. And the core are very, very striking with their like alabaster skin taken to an extreme where they're like marble statues. Like they have an inhuman level of whiteness to them, which makes them very striking. And the white hair as well. Like there's just so much amazing flavor to this card. And the animals that are like gathered around her with their eyes glowing outwards, pretty cool, man. Pretty cool artwork, let's be real. The next card we're going to talk about is amazing! Linvala, Keeper of Silence. 2 white and 2 for a 3/4 flyer that says activated abilities of creatures your opponents control can't be activated. It feels so mean. This card feels so mean, but it just feels great to go, you know what? I don't think you should activate any of your creatures' activated abilities. No, I think you should just stop. That sounds good. The flavor text says, those who seek to disturb the harmony of life will see their instruments taken from them. She's like your mom, and she comes along, no, Billy, give me the stick, Billy. I gave it to you as a toy, but you've been smacking your sister Becky with it, and now you lose your toy. Bad. Bad. Like, that's the vibe. The artwork is fantastic. You've just got a lovely angel floating along with these scales of balance. There's this constant, like, rain of feathers coming down. I don't know, it's like the sky is, it's kind of like a gloomy, cloudy, dark sky around her, but then right behind her, it's like opening up into light, like she literally is making the clouds and darkness disperse. Either way, very cool concept. The Keeper of Silence is just like, oh, nice activated abilities you no longer possess. Fantastic. Fantastic. Then we've got MacLeod the Loon Arc. 1 white and X for a 0/0 comes into the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on him. You can tap him to put a +1/+1 counter on him. You can also tap him to remove a +1/+1 counter from him to put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. So that's a pretty cool idea. He's basically like this legendary archbishop, like a really high religious figure in the Church of Avacyn, right? I guess like priest, a high priest of the moon, I guess. So he's shown here, like with all of these candles around him. It's dark, but he's there. There's like light coming from probably thousands of candles. He looks fantastic in his big flowing robes with the little symbols of Avacyn on each of the sleeve. And the fact that he can like strengthen the entire congregation based on the power of his own faith. You know, like the +1/+1 counters are the level of his faith. And he can keep tapping and building up his own faith, which is really needed in the times that he existed in on Innistrad specifically, and then transfer that power to the entire congregation. That is a solid bit of flavor. Let's be real, my friends. That is pretty awesome. I like that. The candles around them are just absolutely fantastic. Moving on, we got Path of Bravery. 1 white and 2 for an enchantment that says, as long as your life total is greater than or equal to your starting life total, creatures you control get +1/+1, and whenever one or more creatures you control attack, you gain life equal to the number of attacking creatures. I got to admit, the power level of this card's always felt kind of underwhelming to me. It's like, okay, I mean, as long as you're above 20, your guys get +1/+1, and you gain life based on the number of attackers, but that always felt kind of paltry. The artwork, though, I mean, like, talk about Path of Bravery. You've got this giant dragon here looming over these knights, and sure, the knights have glowing blades, but look at the lands around them. All the lands are devastated and charred, and that is not charred is in the process of being burnt into char. And the dragon responsible for it all is like lurking there above. That is definitely a test of bravery. How does this card all tie together? I have absolutely no idea. Absolutely no idea. Like, the artwork works with the name, and maybe the name works with the abilities, but overall it doesn't tie together very well. It's an alright card, but I don't really like it. Moving on, Rock's Faithmender. 1 white and 3 for a 1/5 with lifelink. If you would gain life, you gain twice that much life instead. I love this. I love doubling effects. I'm a huge fan of big dumb effects. Double it, triple it, quadruple it. Let's keep going. I don't even care. Like, that's how crazy I get. So for me, this is fantastic. The flavor text says, Roxas who live long enough to retire from war lend support with their extensive knowledge of combat injuries. All right, I mean, you can see in the artwork, this is a rhino monk living up to his name. This artwork never really, like, felt very epic to me. You know what I mean? The idea of a faith mender who heals you, like, physically, but also heals you on a spiritual level, thus the double healing, that's a cool idea. The artwork is perfectly serviceable for a monk or whatever. It's just not, it doesn't like jump out at you. The next piece of art we're going to talk about, though, is great. Champion of Lambhole. 2 green and 1 for a 1/1 human warrior. Creatures, it's funny because whenever I look at her, I think elf. Creatures with power less than Champion of Lambhole's power can't block creatures you control. Oh, that's all your creatures. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Champion of Lambhole. This is something that I will definitely bust loose in Historic. I like the idea of this. This is like the champion of an entire village, and as more people arrive, she becomes stronger and emboldens the people to follow her. She looks pretty intense too, man. You know, like, how strong does she have to be? She's pretty lithe. So she's got those arms that look like they've got a fair bit of beef to it to swing that massive, awesome looking halberd. I like the little tassel hanging off of it as well. And the fact that this is set at nighttime with kind of like the twilight sky, you've got all the stars out there, and her hair almost feels like it's melding a little bit with the night. I don't know, man. I really, really dig the artwork on this card a lot. Very cool include. Running it in Historic for sure. Next up, we got Read the Runes. 1 blue and X for an instant that says, draw X cards. For each card drawn this way, discard a card unless you sacrifice a permanent. The world is a puzzle, and the mind is its key. And in the artwork, you can see that there are literally runes spread all over the ground. I'm doing it my own. I'm doing tarot readings, Mom. Wicca is real. Shut up. Oh, this guy, I don't know, man. He looks like a magician, but not like, he doesn't look like a wizard. He looks like a Chris Angel, like, I'm going to make the Statue of Liberty disappear. Whip, like, watch him crunching it. That sort of magician. I don't know. Read the Runes is an alright card. It's a great way to fill up your graveyard and dig through your deck. Or if you have a bunch of permanents you don't care about, it's a great way to draw cards, I guess. I don't know. I never really use this card. It's interesting how, like, the background has this weird deserty kind of vibe. Everything's kind of like sun faded out, but where he is, the sand is cooler looking, and you've got all these runes glowing on the ground. At the very least, that'd be a cool party trick. You know what I mean? Like, that's not too shabby. That's not too shabby. So what do we got next? We got Whelming Wave. 2 blue and 2 for a sorcery. Return all creatures to their owner's hand except for krakens, leviathans, octopuses, and serpents. Flavor text says, I can see why this appeals to Thassa. And that's Kiora. And they're both blue aligned beings. One being a god, one being a planeswalker. So they're both mighty beings who would enjoy magic of this nature, where it's like everything but my giant sea beast gets waved away, washed away, goodbye. And the art shows, exactly what it is, a gigantic, massive wave coming to expel all of mankind. Beat it. This spot is for octopuses to hang out now, chump. After that, we've got Wind Reader Sphinx. 2 blue and 5 for a 3/7 flyer. Whenever a creature with flying attacks, you may draw a card. The flavor text says, your mind is too filled with foolish concerns to hear the subtle whispers that the breeze brings. 7 toughness makes this thing really difficult to deal with. So you're able to attack with it and draw cards with it without worrying about it getting too much combat damage in most cases. It also works as a great blocker while you swing in with other flyers. It's pretty straightforward. Sphinxes to let you draw cards, sure. This is kind of like a crazy, weird nighttime demon sphinx, right? It's got some horns that are either devil horns or weird caterpillar antenna and shadowy wings sitting there posed right in front of the moonlight like that. The moon itself kind of framing it, that's funky. It would be crazy to run into this thing just out in the middle of nowhere, where it's all right, here we go. I'm about to spook the hell out of you and then ask you riddles. You better get it right. After that, we've got Hamlet back Goliath, a giant so big you can live on his back. 1 red and 6 for a 6/6. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you can put X+1/+1 counters on him, where X is that creature's power. And it says if you live on a giant's back, there's only one individual you'll ever need to fear. All right. I love the fact that this thing gets gigantic as you put up more creatures. I love the big, beefy boy nature of him. I think the Goliath himself looks all hilarious as it's just this huge thing wandering along with a little forest growing on his back and a goblin pointing on forwards, off we go. They're making their dinner on his back and he's just moving along. That's hilarious. You just better hope he doesn't grab that. That's an uprooted tree that he's using as a staff, right? It's just upside down. How amazing is that? Not too shabby. After that, we got Hell Rider. 2 red and 2 for a 3/3 with haste. Whenever a creature you control attacks, Hell Rider deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. That's new wording, isn't it? They changed it to include planeswalker as well. All right. That makes sense with the old planeswalker damage redirection. Flavor text says, behind every devil's mayhem lurks a demon scheme. All right. That works. And the artwork shows the Hell Rider itself. It's a devil riding a little demon steed. He's got a chain leash for it. The little steed's feet are flaming and crazy. You just picture him out there whoosh, whoosh, just whipping people with his chains, getting all hardcore with it. It's all right, man. It's got that intense kind of vibe to it. I'm down. I am down. All right, next card we've got is Krenko Mob Boss. 2 red and 2 for a 3/3. He is a legendary goblin warrior. Tap him to get X+1/+1 to get X/1/1 red goblin creature tokens, where X is the number of goblins you control. So that quickly gets out of hand. He displays a perverse charisma fueled by avarice. Highly dangerous, recommends civil sanctions. The fact that he is an individual goblin who's 3/3 is insane. That's so big for a goblin, right? Most goblins are 1/1, maybe 2/2 for the bigger lord goblins. But Krenko, no. Krenko's 3/3. That's elephant size. That's elephant power level. But he's not the size of an elephant. So it's his craftiness, his ability to do what needs to get done, smarter than your average goblin. Krenko's pretty intense. He's a good choice, man. People are going to have fun playing with him and other goblin token generators to make massive goblin mobs. And why wouldn't you? That's some good times. And Krenko looks pretty dope in the artwork. Let's be real. I can see why the other goblins follow him. He's even fashioned himself almost like a little makeshift crown. After that, we've got an elven legend, Richcar Pima Renegade. Pima Renegade? Why would you call a place Pima? Pima Pants? What? Okay, let's just move on from that. 1 green and 2 for a 2/2 elf druid. When Richcar Pima Renegade Enters the battlefield. Put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Each creature you control with a counter on it has tap to add a green mana. Flavor text says, Aether is the soul of Kaladesh, and all souls should be free. And the artwork shows Richcar. Does he have an arm? No, okay, he's holding a double pointy branch. He doesn't make for a like a compelling leader, right? Like, this doesn't feel like somebody that I would follow. He looks all right for an elf. I mean, the tree that he's on, that's kind of like reaching its branches back and whatever, kind of like he's like telling it to like hold its branch back and whip forward, maybe? I don't know. He does not inspire me. The idea of him being able to enhance a couple of creatures and they can tap for mana, okay, I guess, but yeah, he doesn't feel like someone that I would follow. I'm not inspired looking at him, right? I'm a renegade. It's like, you're very finely dressed for a renegade. You don't really get into too much trouble. Hey, I hang out in the city's arboreum, so shut up. Let's take a look at, what do we got? What's the last card here? Black Market. 2 black and 3 for an enchantment that says, whenever a creature dies, put a charge counter on Black Market. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, add 1 black to your mana pool for each charge counter on Black Market. This card became way more powerful when they got rid of mana burn, right? Because if you had extra mana kicking around back in the day, you would actually lose life based on how much mana you had. So if you had 5, if this generated 5 mana, but you couldn't use that 5 mana, you'd lose 5 life. But now the way things work is mana just dissipates out into the Aether, so you don't take damage anymore. And that makes cards like this gross as they generate mana for you every main phase. When you're still able to cast sorceries, like, you can cast everything during your main phase. It's the perfect time to be getting the mana. Not too shabby. I mean, I don't 100% understand the flavor behind the Black Market. Is it that every time one of your creature dies, you sell their body parts on the Black Market and then you get rewarded for it, but you're like, it's a cumulative reward that keeps on going? Like, that's where it doesn't add up, because you look in the artwork, you can see those beast parts on the table, and you can see like glowing black stones, which is a funky way to represent like being given mana, in all honesty. But like, under scrutiny, the whole kind of concept falls apart. We're like, wait, how does this work? What's going on? But either way, a very powerful card. Very cool. Great include. I think people will have a bunch of fun with it in Historic. I could see myself dabbling around with something silly like this. And like, oh, you know what? You could use that to fuel like endless chaos wand shenanigans. I should try doing that. I should try building that. Anyways, this will be the last video talking about JumpStart, unless there's enough interest. If you want me to talk about the lands from the set, let me know in the comments below, because there are a bunch of beautiful lands and we can do a video on that. Thanks for coming by, everybody. This is a fan-funded channel, so if you like what I'm doing, consider joining up on my Patreon and supporting. Either way, thanks for being here, and I'll see you all very soon.